What's up, guys? UFC 264 just wrapped up, and honestly, the fights that we didn't think would deliver, delivered, and the fights that we thought would deliver didn't deliver as much. The way the main event ended was very anticlimactic. Burns versus Thompson really wasn't anything exciting, but it was the chess match that we thought it was probably going to be. Tuivasa and Hardy, explosive. Aldana had a huge finish over Kunitskaya. O'Malley gave Moutinho everything he had, and honestly, in my opinion, should not have been stopped when it was. Pereira and Nico Price was a good fight. Poirier just putting it on Ryan Hall, who didn't show the best fight IQ, and Duplessis knocking out Trevin Giles the way he did. At this point, we should not even watch the high-profile fights. Just watch the fights nobody cares about, because that's where you're going to get your money's worth. But let's start with that main event. Dustin Poirier defeats Conor McGregor by the end of the first round due to a doctor stoppage, as Conor was demanding. And not only that, the fight was so ironic, because if you think about all the stuff these two said about each other, specifically what Conor said about Dustin leading up to this fight, all of it happened to him. Everything he said would happen to Dustin happened to him practically besides the knockout. He said Dustin would shoot the first takedown. Conor's the one that shot the first takedown. He said Dustin would leave out on a stretcher. Conor left out on a stretcher. He said Dustin would get finished in the first round. Conor got finished in the first round. I think he said Dustin was also fragile or something. He snaps his own ankle. Remember when Conor also said that knockouts only count? But he's the one that dove in for a guillotine. Such an ironic fight, man, but I made a breakdown about the fight already. Conor had a very strong early first round. He was coming out there with kicks, very similar to the way he came out in the first fight against Dustin Poirier, and they were very successful. It's exactly what I was talking about in my breakdown of what Conor needed to do to beat Poirier. Body kicks, leg kicks, moving away from Poirier's leg kicks. He was doing all of this and was being extremely successful. But it seemed like for some reason, his boxing wasn't nearly the same as it used to be. He was lunging out with the left hand from a very far distance, and it might be for the fact that he's been training traditional boxing for so long that the boxing style he used to bring to the UFC probably felt a little bit rusty for him to get back into the karate stance, moving in and out, attacking from the long range, because when he's not curling himself in like a traditional boxer, the punches come out differently. And he was throwing them without really much head movement. It got him caught in the midway throughout that first round. Dustin was actually the one that was slipping on the outside of the left hand, and he was landing his own lefts. He was showing to be the better boxer in the fight with Conor McGregor. Although I would say Conor was probably showing to be the better striker mostly. Dustin was having success landing a few left hands, and Conor got overwhelmed by the pressure. He felt very uncomfortable, and he did that thing where he brings his hands in close, he crouches his guard, very similar to what he did against Poirier in the second fight before Poirier's barrage against the cage. Notice how he just like reaches forward a little bit with his hands and doesn't do anything offensively. That's what he did against Poirier, but he was actually able to get the clinch, and he definitely could have taken down Poirier if he drove that in. I don't think he wanted to go for a takedown. He just wanted to negate the action. He wanted to just relieve the pressure and reset the fight. But that's where the downfall started. He clinched up and brought Poirier to the cage. And from there, Poirier was able to reverse the position, and he was attacking a single leg, but it wasn't really there. Conor went in for a guillotine choke. The last thing I ever would have thought Conor would go for. Man, did that put him in a bad position, because he went on the ground. Poirier's a hard guy to submit unless you're Khabib. Got out of the choke and just started raining down elbows and punches. Conor had the same defense he had when he fought Khabib. He had help from Herb Dean yet again. Herb allowing Conor to yet again cheat in a fight and get out of a compromising position. And then his ankle pretty much just snaps. It was a freak accident. Poirier said there was a check kick. There was no check kicks. Some people were saying that the front kick that Conor threw before his ankle snapped, Dustin actually hit it with his elbow. He did not hit it with his elbow. There's really nothing that contributed to that happening that I've seen already. I've watched it multiple times, and I don't see anything that would have contributed to that other than the leg kicks he was landing was damaging his own leg the whole time, or he came into the fight with a damaged leg and overconditioned them. That's very possible as well. Now, I know a lot of people will say that Dustin Poirier was going to win. He definitely had the momentum, and he definitely showed to be the better mixed martial artist in the fight, but you could never say for certain. You could never say, because look what happened with Michael Chandler versus Charles Oliveira. Imagine if that fight ended by like a doctor stoppage after the first round. Let's just say something freakish happened in the corner. Charles Oliveira went to stand up from the stool and his ankle snapped. Whatever, we'll just say for argument's sake. Everybody would say that Michael Chandler would have won the fight regardless, right? Without seeing the second round. That's why you could never say how the fight would play out afterward if Conor never hurt his ankle. If he actually never hurt his ankle, he never would have hit the ground where Poirier was landing ground and pound shots yet again. I would think that Poirier would win, but I cannot say for sure. Conor was pretty mad after the fight. I mean, he kept going after Dustin. Dustin was taunting him. And honestly, it reminded me of like when a spoiled kid doesn't get a toy. You know, he's saying, I'll fight him outside if I have to. Well, for him to do that, he's going to wait several months. I mean, he doesn't want to fight Dustin now because out there are no rules. You come out there with one leg. Of course, Dustin's not going to care of attacking the leg and stuff. But I hope they don't put this back together again. If they put this back together for the 4th fight, I mean, it will be Dustin's choice, and if he wants it, I guess he deserves it. I mean, he's the winner again, but then people are going to be leapfrogging Dustin for that title shot. What I want to see is the fight that should have happened already. Dustin versus Oliveira. That's the only fight I care to see for Dustin right now. They're clearly the 2 best guys, and stylistically, it's so enticing. I mean, Dustin Poirier is a great swarmer. He has very good boxing. He has good jiu-jitsu and good wrestling. Very durable, experienced, finds openings on the opponent, and he's just purely all game. Oliveira, I would say, has the more techniques. He's more skilled in many areas, right? I think he's a better wrestler than Dustin. I think he's a better Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu artist than Dustin. He's a better kicker than Dustin. He's not as good of a boxer, but where Dustin's going to have trouble finding Charles Oliveira is from a distance using his punches, which is what he's going to have to do. He cannot use takedowns to cover that ground to get inside of Oliveira's reach. He cannot do that. And that's going to cause a bit of an issue for Dustin, and we know what he's going to go to. He's going to go for that shift combination like he does on everybody, and honestly, I do think it can work against Oliveira. I just wonder if Oliveira is going to game plan for that because that's one of Dustin's signature combinations. Everybody who prepares for Poirier definitely should be drilling against that combo. And honestly, if Oliveira does get the hang of that combination, I do kind of favor him to win. I do kind of favor him to beat Poirier. But the thing about Oliveira is he doesn't move his head. He's not the toughest guy. He's pretty tough, but he's not on the level of Poirier. And honestly, if Oliveira gets put in a compromising position on the cage or on the ground, he gets dropped, I don't see him surviving the same way he survived against Michael Chandler. I really don't see that. Poirier is very hard to survive from when he has you hurt. So Dustin Poirier is going to have to fight Charles Oliveira. As for Conor, he's not going to be out that long. I think probably early next year is the time he's going to come back. He might take like 6 to 9 months off for the ankle. And the division is going to look very different when he does return. I hope he doesn't go to welterweight. Those guys are way too big for him. Only for Nate Diaz. That's the only one that makes sense. Either Nate Diaz at welterweight or Conor wants to take on another lightweight. Hopefully for him, for what he wants. Let's say Dustin does fight Oliveira later in this year. He fights him in like November at Madison Square Garden. And of course, Poirier is a big name these days, so they can actually sell that. And let's say Dustin loses. If Dustin loses to Oliveira, and then Conor comes back months later, then they can make the fight again if they want. Do whatever they want there. That's the only way I can see Conor fighting Poirier at this point. But honestly, through the rankings, who I like to see Conor fight, I would like to see him fight Rafa dos Anjos. Bring that back together because they almost fought backstage last night. That's a good fight to put together. I think it's competitive. And then we go to the co-main event. Gilbert Burns defeats Stephen Thompson by a decision 29-28 on all scorecards. Pretty close fight. I mean, not much to really say here. Wonderboy was sticking on the outside looking to counter, and he was very dangerous. He caught Burns with some big right hands, looked for some high kicks and stuff like that, and Burns didn't want to explode and be aggressive like he usually is, and pretty much just wrestled his way to a victory. He didn't really do much. Didn't really damage Wonderboy that much. And Burns is now the only fighter to take down Wonderboy at least 2 times in a fight ever since Wonderboy fought Matt Brown, I think back in 2012. Think of all the great wrestlers like Johnny Hendricks or Roy McDonald, Tyron Woodley, all these big time wrestlers, and Burns is the next guy to take him down more than once in a fight. But yeah, Burns just got the control time to a victory pretty much. The elbows to the back of the head of Wonderboy were pretty dirty, man. He kept exploding and hit him like 5 times to the back of the head. There could absolutely be a case where, even though it was at the end of the round, the ref could have taken a point away from Burns and this fight would have been a draw. You cannot do that, man. He said he went Cody Garbrandt crazy against Usman. He went Cody Garbrandt crazy yet again against Wonderboy. But who these two should be fighting next? So Gilbert Burns, I like to see him fight either Leon Edwards for the #1 contender spot, because at this point, Colby is the obvious fight for Usman. If Wonderboy would have beaten Burns, then Wonderboy definitely should have deserved a title shot over Colby, in my opinion. But with him losing, Colby versus Usman 2 is the fight to make. Burns versus Leon makes a good #1 contender fight. Whoever wins that fights the champ next. And yes, even though Burns just lost to Usman, he's the only guy to ever hurt Usman to that point. Pretty much dropped him. And now he just beat Wonderboy, who was on a crazy good streak. So I want to see Burns versus Leon Edwards, and I want to see Jorge Masvidal fight Vicente Luque. That would be amazing. Then we go to Tai Tuivasa defeating Greg Hardy by a first round knockout. Exactly what we got for 2 heavyweights who are fast and have tremendous power in their hands and aren't the most technical, to be honest. Tuivasa came there with a bunch of leg kicks, and Greg Hardy's just so green. He's very explosive and has a lot of power. And ultimately, that greenness of him, the fact that he didn't stay composed when he hurt Tuivasa, I mean, he had him on Kevin Lee legs. Right, he caught him with a right straight, and Tuivasa was definitely wobbling. Greg Hardy smelled blood and ran in there looking for a left hook, but he ended up running into Tuivasa's left hook and got KO'd on his feet, came back when he hit the ground, and the ref called it. Great performance by Tuivasa. I mean, he needed that kind of knockout. I know a lot of people are happy about that fight. Irene Aldana had a good performance, especially showing her boxing yet again in this fight, catching that check left hook as Yana Kunitskaya was very reckless moving forward, dropping her right hand constantly, and ultimately just falling into some jabs here and there, but she was trying to muscle her way into a clinch and just make it as dirty as possible. It didn't really work out for her. She gave up the posture, gave up her back, and Irene Aldana just had a very clean victory over Yana Kunitskaya. At this point, Irene Aldana definitely should be up for Amanda Nunes after Juliana Pena loses. That's an interesting fight on the feet, but I do think Amanda Nunes will take Aldana to the ground and dominate. But if there's anybody who can box with Nunes, it's definitely Aldana. And then we go to Sean O'Malley TKOing Kris Moutinho 4 minutes and 33 seconds of the third round. Sean O'Malley was showing all of his skills on the feet, catching jabs, right hands, head kicks, knees in the third round. But Kris Moutinho was the ultimate 135-pound heavy bag. The guy took a beating I haven't seen in a long time, and he has one of the best chins in the UFC, definitely, and this was his first fight. O'Malley has crushing power. He drops so many people with his strikes. He definitely has crazy good power, and that's why this was so impressive. It's not like, Kris Moutinho was taking shots from Dominic Cruz like that. He's taking shots from Sean O'Malley and just walking through them, pressuring him and looking for that southpaw right hook that was getting close so many times as O'Malley was leaning away. Just a little bit more extension, a little bit faster on the explosion, and Moutinho definitely would have had that right hook on O'Malley and probably had him hurt at any point. But there was a clear gap in skill, clear gap in just overall ability. I mean, the first round should have been a 10-7, second round 10-8, third round was going to be a 10-8. O'Malley was landing these combinations with knees in there, with head kicks. I literally jumped out of my chair like, how is this guy even standing? I thought those shots would have been too dangerous. But Moutinho just walks through them. It wasn't like he was rocked and wobbly. He got dropped in the first round and got hurt a couple times throughout the fight, but he wasn't wobbly the way, like, I know a lot of people bring up Tony Ferguson versus Justin Gaethje. He wasn't like that. Tony Ferguson was definitely getting wobbled by the shots and running away from the punishment. Moutinho was walking into the punishment and then through it. And that is the reason why the fight should not have been stopped when it was. Herb Dean had two big mess ups tonight. This stoppage, not allowing Kris Moutinho to finish the fight, let the kid fight. He's not out of it. Yes, he's taking a lot of damage, but he's not getting wobbled and showing that he's concussed. Definitely micro concussions, but not being concussed in the fight the way other fighters are. I mean, like, he didn't get dropped the way Greg Hardy did. If that was what it was, then that would be different, obviously. But if the guy's walking through punches, even though the punches look damaging, it must mean that the shots are not hurting him as much as it would hurt other fighters. I think that's why a lot of people are getting confused here. Some people just have a good chin. Look at the way Francis Ngannou took Stipe's right hand. Nobody's taking Stipe's right hand like that. And Kris Moutinho is taking Sean O'Malley's shots better than anybody else has. It's probably because they're not damaging him the same way. Yes, there's cosmetic damage because, of course, people are made of skin and that's very different. But what we're talking about is more importantly, the brain. He's probably not taking as much brain damage as a lot of people think he was, which is why you gotta let the kid fight. He earned that opportunity. He came in there on short notice, let him finish off the fight because he could have, 100%. But at the end of the day, O'Malley was of course going to win. I really wanted to hear the scorecards because they definitely would have been some of the most lopsided scorecards. And all respect to Kris Moutinho. The guy took this on short notice, first fight in the UFC, fighting one of the biggest prospects of the sport, a devastating striker, and was all game. He led a lot of people to think that, he wasn't coming in here tonight to really win, but he put on a facade, man. He definitely showed up to win. But at this point, what I'd like to see from both these guys, Sean O'Malley should fight Cody Garbrandt. He called out a bunch of guys, but out of the guys he called out, I think Garbrandt and Dominic Cruz are the only fighters that make any kind of sense right now. Rob Font's way too high in the rankings. He's pretty close to a title shot. That's definitely not the fight for him. Cody Garbrandt's coming off a big loss. He's not doing that great in his career. And stylistically, man, who wouldn't love that fight? There would definitely be a knockout in that one, 100%. We're talking about two of the most explosive guys in the division who both look for KOs every single time. That's the fight we want to make. And as for Kris Moutinho, give him another shot, man. That kind of effort he gave definitely warrants him another shot. Max Griffin had a good performance over Carlos Condit, dropped him in the first round, catch him with good right hands and some good combinations. Condit's old, man. I think he should retire, man. Michel Pereira and Nico Price had a very interesting fight. Pereira started to gas out as the fight was going on, bringing some of his flashy stuff back into the fight, flipping kicks. He actually hit Nico Price in the head, and I think actually to the eye when he somersaulted on top of him. He shouldn't be going for that because you can accidentally stomp on your opponent, man. Ilia Topuria had an amazing performance over Ryan Hall. I made a breakdown about the fight, just stuck to the fundamentals, stayed away, and allowed Ryan Hall to just keep rolling in the fight. It reminded me of fighting those bosses in Dark Souls, and that was a great performance for Ilia Topuria, but He didn't show all of his skills, especially for the big crowd that came tonight. But I'm telling you guys right now, he definitely has a bright future, like I've been saying. You think he's just a good striker? He's an amazing jiu-jitsu artist as well. Dricus du Plessis with an amazing knockout over Trevin Giles. I mean, rebounding off the cage with the 1-2, catching that long right straight on Giles as he was kind of complacent. 100% reminded me of when Anthony Pettis knocked out Stephen Thompson. Bounced off the cage, right hand. It's a very unexpected way to attack your opponent. And I do have to catch up with the early prelims. I did have to miss those. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you guys enjoyed the fights. And if you did, make sure to give this a thumbs up. If you enjoyed my content, make sure to subscribe. And I'll see you guys in the next video.